What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, talk to me. Pierre Poilievre, Montreal's latest heartthrob. What's happening here?
Well, don't talk to me. It's Jean-Marc Léger, that guy who does, he's the pollster. I'm just a guy who looks at the numbers and try to figure them out. What he has done, and he released another tranche of the monthly poll he does for TVA and for the Journal de Montréal, and he was looking at federal numbers, and once again the numbers are terrible for the Liberals overall. But in Quebec, it's very, very interesting because at this point, Pierre Poilievre, even though many respondents in Quebec have huge misgivings over Poilievre and his party's apparent stance on whether it's abortion or the environment. There's a real concern there, and yet they are in a dead heat. The Liberals and the Tories, at 23%, I believe, are in a dead heat in Quebec overall. But what's really funny is, and he admits, Monsieur Léger admits, that because with Montreal itself, the sampling gets that much smaller. So the results might be a little bit twisted, but he's getting the same echo on the island of Montreal. Support for the Liberals is in a dead heat with support for the Poilievre Conservatives at 36%. Mm-hmm. And he says, based on looking at the breakdown of the panel, much, if not most of that support is coming from non-Francophones and, new arrivals, be they immigrants or new arrivals to Canada. And he points out, and it's something I think that is long overdue, there is a misconception, even among conservative supporters, that, Trudeau's opening the floodgates to immigration because he wants people to vote for him. As if, and what a patronizing view that is, isn't that? Because you allowed me to come to your country, I'm going to vote for you forever and ever and ever. That may have been true 40, 50 years ago. But I like to think that people coming here are a tad more sophisticated now. And the fact is that this could prove to be trouble, perhaps, for some incumbents, in ridings on the city of Montreal. And we had a little taste of this, you and I and our listeners, when Anthony Housefather was wondering about his future within the Liberal Party. And, he was
right.
kind of musing with the idea of maybe crossing the floor. In the end, he didn't do it. But I have to acknowledge, in my experience, I won't put words in your mouth, but I've heard a lot more of our listeners, Anglophones, turn around and express full-throated support for the Conservatives now than I have ever, since I've been working on the station. I wasn't there in the days when Mulroney was the Prime Minister. But certainly since then, when we've gone through various incarnations, whether it's Harper and then Trudeau, the fact is there seems to be a much greater willingness on the part of Anglophones, or more specifically non-Francophones, on the island of Montreal, perhaps to start kicking the tires on Poilievre's Conservatives in time for the next election.
It's funny you say that, Jim. I would agree, but then I think how much of that is frustration over the Liberal government as opposed to support for a Conservative government, right?
Well, absolutely. But, on the other hand, Aaron, you can take that and apply that to most of the numbers you're seeing across the country. How much of this is, in fact, an endorsement of Pierre Poilievre or in fact, a repudiation, a very visceral repudiation of Justin Trudeau? And I cannot help but remember back in 2015, the day after the federal election, you and I were talking on this very show. And I pointed out, Trudeau did not win, Harper lost it. It was a repudiation of Harper. And I think it says something about Justin Trudeau's abilities as a politician and as a leader that he is, as far as I'm concerned, placed him in precisely the same situation of public disdain that Harper found himself in 2015. And I think that's why we're going to see the same result, presuming the election's held in 2025.
Yeah, and of course the other part of that is the public, regardless of who that leader is, and this has been said many times, Jim, right? At some point, 8-9 years later, it doesn't matter who's there, we've had enough.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's basic voter fatigue. There's the idea that you're fed up of hearing the words Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You're fed up of hearing his voice. You just get annoyed whenever he comes on the news. And listen, I know people like that. I'm one of them. Mm-hmm. And the fact is when you think of all the things you and I talk about when it comes to federal politics and how the consensus, like it's a given, the federal government isn't working. There's no agency, there's no level of the federal government that actually works for any period of time. But then you go beyond that and you see how many times policy is trotted out when in fact it's nothing more than virtue signaling in front of a bunch of cameras, and we don't really know which way the country is going to go. But I think above and beyond everything else, whether it's the economy, whether it is simply the idea that, and perhaps a very justified idea, that Ottawa is no longer listening to you, and I think people living in rural Ontario have as much a gripe about that as Anglophones in Quebec. That's when you see things change in a big way.
I wonder, too, at some point, you have to think, right, voters now, and I guess we have to mention this every time we talk this way, right? We're still roughly a year and a half away from a federal election. And you'd have to think as well that all this bad news that's been concentrated, and I'm going to say just in the last 2 months, on the federal government, going all the way back to the budget and the capital gain situation and defense spending and 2% of GDP. All of it seems to have piled into this short period of time. It's as if now the best thing, Jim, that could happen for the Liberals is no news of any kind. Just let it go away. And typically that's what happens in the summer. Maybe that works to their advantage.
Oh, it's so funny you say that, because before I came on, I was talking to our mutual producer, Dean, and he pointed out, there's a lot of political news going on. And I said, there's no more break. There's no more summer break. I know the session in the National Assembly will suspend at the end of this week, and they don't come back till September. But now, whether everyone's in perpetual campaign, now whether anyone is wanting to get the message out, I don't think there's going to be a lull in the attacks on social media, or in the attacks in press conferences, or in the hounding of Justin Trudeau to figure out how long he's going to stay on as leader of the Liberals, given the way these numbers keep heading down. I don't think that, honestly, I know that people on the one hand will do that kind of siesta thing. They'll kick back and take it easy over the course of the summer. But I think we are so attuned now to all these various nuances, to all these various potential outrages, that it won't take much for a lot of people to get very, very interested. And quite frankly, at this point, I wouldn't put it past Trudeau in a kind of a Hail Mary, play, is to call a snap election and just say, you know what, down the torpedoes, let me get some shiny things to throw to the electorate. Because I think if we wait till 2025, it is going to be the single largest humiliation any politician and any political party has suffered in Canadian history.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, we know snap elections already. A couple of places that have decided to go. I'm not talking about here, but the idea, we don't think about these till someone decides to do it. And then it's like, oh, they're calling a snap election. So perhaps it's not that far from the realm of possibility that he'd do something like that. I wonder how many poll results, though, you'd have to wait for before you say to yourself, oh, I see it's not getting worse, so let's go ahead and do this now, pull the plug.
Yeah, but you're thinking the way I am thinking, which is rationally, which is based on evidence, which is based on, trying to handicap your chances. I just get this tremendous feeling, Aaron, that 98% of what Justin Trudeau is doing now is just ego. Nothing to do with the future of the party, nothing to do with politics, just a matter of maintaining whatever image it is that he has of himself that he thinks Canadians are buying into. But my God, and I'm not one to, to slavishly trust polls. I know things can turn on a dime, but it would have to be a very, very, very big dime.
Support for younger Canadians, or for Trudeau with younger Canadians, seems to be falling off a cliff, and that's traditionally been the stronghold going all the way back to when he was first elected. It's a whole different ballgame now. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can't take any of these, as this conversation began about the so-called immigrant vote, you can't take any of this for granted anymore. I think that has completely gone out the window. And God knows what the federal Liberal Party is going to look like at the end of this.
Jim, we're gonna call it a day here. I did want to ask you one thing. This ties into my question. You're a motorist. You're a driver.
Yes.
If you would ask this, and this is the basis of my question today, if the city could do something to make your life as a driver better, just one thing, what would it be?
I know the work has to be done. Coordinate the work, and I sound stupid saying that, because that's a wish we've been making for the past 15 years. It's not exclusive to the Plante administration, but Montreal can't figure it out. But honestly, I dread
whenever I have to take a car into Montreal.
Okay. So better planning, I guess, would be the answer, right?
Well, that's in the short term, but it doesn't make any sense, Aaron, whether it's the road scheduling, whether it's the parking.
Right.
It's clear that this administration, I'll give credit where credit or blame where it's due. And this, you're quite right when you say this is an anti-car administration. But on the other hand, overall, Montreal's batting average dealing with drivers, coordinating traffic is absolutely miserable.
And we'll leave it at that. All right. Jim, thank you. You have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
That amount.